Test. Excellent. Oh my God. All right. Hello. Welcome to Miss Peepers Reading Corner. I'm Katrina, aka Miss Peepers. Let's talk about books. Today we are doing a book tag. We're doing the Booktube Embarrassment tag. I've got my notes written here. I promise I can more or less read that. I also put the questions down in the comments. If you're interested in following along, checking back later, or if you want to make your own tag video with these questions. I also have my glass of wine because nothing prevents embarrassment as so much as wine. Embarrassment the next day, perhaps. Drink responsibly if you choose to imbibe alcohol. But regardless, let's do this tag. This tag was created by Andy at Really Random Reads. Andy is a relatively new booktuber. I think he started at the end of last year, so 5-6 months ago. So I just learned about him through this tag, which is a pretty fun way to find a new booktuber. I look forward to digging into more of his channel and seeing what he's all about, and I encourage you to do the same because it's always good to support new booktubers. And I was tagged in this for this book tag by Kelly at Books I'm Not Reading. Kelly is a delight. I've been following her for a while, and I definitely encourage her channel wholeheartedly. So please check out those two creators. And if you like content like this or any kind of bookish content, I assume you like bookish content because you're on my channel. So, I mean, why else would you be here if not for books? So, let's hop into... move my post-it notes so I can actually read my questions. Let's hop into the questions. Okay, so the concept of this tag, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's talking about bookish things that may cause embarrassment or social awkwardness in some way. So we're gonna just jump right out here and say, and the first question is a book that someone or something made you... What is happening here? Pardon me. Oh my goodness. I love devices that make a bunch of noise when they're powering themselves. Just turn yourself off. It's fine. Pardon me. All right. That's the fun part about live. You never know what's going to happen. I got a new video camera, a little video camera to try out, and it's charging. Anyway, a book someone or something made you feel embarrassed about liking. This is an interesting one because I rarely, I guess, run into people who are like, oh, you liked that? Although there are questions further down we'll talk about. But I guess if we think about something made you feel embarrassed about liking, in this case, I wrote down two books. One was A Little Life and the other was Verity. So A Little Life by, I'm probably going to mispronounce her name, for which I apologize. I believe it's Hanya. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Hanya. This is not intentional. But A Little Life is a chonker of a book that definitely has made the rounds on Booktube and just in bookish conversations in general. It is the story of a group of friends, particularly focusing on one of the friends who has just had a really difficult life. He goes through a lot of trauma throughout his lifetime, and it's largely a character study sort of book. And we get a bit into the lives of the other friends in this group as well, and how they interact with this friend, how they get to know him, how they respond to learning bits and pieces about his life. He's very closed off because he's been through a lot of trauma. And look, when I read this book, I went in knowing very little about it. And I'm glad actually that I read it that way, because I did enjoy the book. It was sad. It was disturbing and distressing. Then after I read it, I learned that the author very deliberately sat down with the specific goal of writing the saddest book that she could think of. She has said this in interviews. I'm not making it up. I've heard this before. And you feel a little cheated when that happens. So rather than necessarily following a storyline or following how a character evolves throughout the writing process, it was just, okay, let's come up with a bunch of sad stuff. Bam, 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 bam. And you just feel kind of cheated and manipulated when you find that out about a book. So yeah, I still enjoyed the book. It's definitely one that I don't, I actually read it before I had a Booktube channel, and I'm kind of glad because I don't even know how I'd begin to make a video about it. But anyway, enough said. The other one is Verity by Colleen Hoover, and this is more like, I liked Verity as a book. This is like she's primarily a romance writer. I don't think I have to introduce Colleen Hoover. She's primarily a romance writer, but she wrote this one like thriller-esque romance book, and it was fun. I read it not knowing who she was. I picked it up randomly at a used bookstore. It's a fun book. It definitely is not the most careful around the subject of mental health. It's got a lot of sex in it. So from my perspective, it's funny. People who read romance novels, especially the more erotica romance novels, are like, really? You thought that was a lot of sex? Okay. But I just don't read that stuff usually very much. But anyway, it's I enjoyed the book, but it definitely was one of those, as I learned more about Colleen Hoover, and she's been involved in some controversy throughout. I will not delve it deeply into that, but it is a little bit embarrassing. I'm like, oh no. And now I also have one person who, knowing I read Verity, is now recommending me all of the romance novels, and I'm like, look, every once in a while I'll read one, but no, I'm not reading them all. So anyway, fun stuff. So that leads to a little social awkwardness more than embarrassment. But anyway, moving on. Number 2 is a book you're embarrassed about completely missing the point of. And it's interesting because this is a good question. It's interesting to me because I if I'm not understanding what a book is about, I'll typically look it up. Now, obviously, you have to know that you're not understanding the book, or you have to know that you're not quite getting the point of it, in order to know to look it up and figure out what you're doing, what's going on there. But I was thinking through the book that came to mind for me is one that I actually read in school when I was a teenager, and that's The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I do actually, and I think it just came up on an anniversary. It was the 100th anniversary of its publishing. I believe it's came up or coming up this year. So I do actually want to reread it as an adult to see if I connect better to it. But as I was reading this book, and you're learning about the symbolism, and like, especially in an American public school, the way that literature is taught is not in a way that encourages people to enjoy reading, but rather to say, if you don't know what the blinking green light means, then you've completely missed the point of this novel. And so but I just did not understand why someone would want to read about such horrible characters. I did not care about anyone in this. I was like, okay, a bunch of rich people throwing their money around, and this guy who's trying to be one. I don't care. So for me, what I missed the point of, not so much what was the book about, because of course I studied it in a class, so we learned together what the book was about. But what I just didn't quite understand why it was considered such an American classic. And I guess technically I still don't, because I have not reread it. So I guess that's possibly a little bit embarrassing. Maybe, I don't know. I also, as a more modern example, and as more an example from adulthood, there are lots of book series, and I do not understand why so many books have so many novels. So there's so many books in a series so often. And I say this as a fan of both the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett, which is 41 novels long. Yes, I'm going to explain. And also the TV series Doctor Who, which has been on for 60 years, with a little gap in there, but 60 years. And But it feels like, to me, it's this phenomenon of one person does it, or like a few people have done something well, and so now everybody wants to do it. That every fantasy writer wants to be either Tolkien or George R. R. Martin, or someone along those lines. Every sci-fi writer wants to be, I don't know, H.G. Wells, maybe. I don't know. I can't think of a good example there. H.P. Lovecraft. But the point is that you see something like a book series that has a lot of books that works well. That doesn't mean that every series needs to have a lot of books. And this concept that a single continuous story might have 10, 15, 20 novels in it just does not make sense to me. And I think that that's the difference with Discworld, in that Discworld is 41 books, but it's not one continuous story. There are connections between the stories. There are like sub series within, but again, they're connected, but you don't have to read them in order. Like, you're not, if you miss book 3, the third book published, you're not necessarily like at a loss when you pick up the fourth book. You can read them in a bunch of different orders. There are many opinions on the correct order in which to read Discworld. And so, yeah, so to me, that's a different sort of approach. And I do see authors doing that too, where they'll have like there's this trilogy, and then there's another trilogy that's like, or another plot arc that is in that same world, but maybe a spin-off character, and then here's another one, and then it ends up being 15 books. That's not one continuous story. I just feel like there's a time and a place for that, right? All right, and I see in the comments, Kevin has joined us. Welcome, Kevin. Great Gatsby sucks. I love it. I love it. I love that comment. Thank you for your thoughts on that. I do want to reread it, but the comment says Great Gatsby sucks except when used to awaken rich people, which I don't know if it's ever done. It probably has not. It's tough to have self-awareness when you have so much privilege and money. But if it saved one person, if it changed one person's perspective, it's worth it, right? I guess maybe. And then as for Discworld being the Star Trek or Star Wars, where same reality, tons of stories. Yes, that's exactly it. And with Star Trek and Star Wars, a lot of those books are written by multiple authors, right? And so you have different storylines, but different writers. And actually, that comes back to my point about Doctor Who, which is that I love Doctor Who, but it's had many writers over the years. It's had different actors. It's had different people involved in all parts of the production process, so that the story does refresh with new ideas and new thoughts, even though technically it is one continuous story. There are breaks in it, and different characters that come in and out. So, yeah, love it. So question number 3, is a book you would be embarrassed to be seen reading in public. And I had some trouble with this one, because I mean, I do read in public from time to time. I don't go into public very often if I don't have to. But I'm definitely an indoor cat, but I do read in public, and for me, it kind of depends on where I am. So like the places that I'm most likely to read in public are like in waiting rooms, or whether I'm waiting for my car oil to be changed, or waiting for a doctor's appointment to start, or things like that. Primarily, that's where I will read in public. And so for me, I typically do that so I can disappear, but I do feel a little awkward sometimes if I'm reading a children's or YA book. And I don't know why, because there's nothing wrong with that. And I think possibly it has to do with being someone assuming that that they know the reason that oh no. Am I back? Okay, I'm back. Sorry, my OBS Studio streaming software just disconnected for some reason. I don't know where I got lost. Anyway, yeah, so a book I'd be embarrassed to read in public, children's book, YA, Also, if I were reading like a steamy romance, I would not put that. I would not do that in public. That would feel weird. But I don't read those terribly often, so that doesn't come up very much. Okay, number 4, a book you're embarrassed to buy in person. Um, Honestly, I buy all. I read all sorts of different types of books, so um, in general, and also as I the older I get, the less embarrassment I feel. I think that has to do with confidence and also the realization that someone can tell you this, but you almost have to internalize it yourself, which is that no one really cares, and the people who do care, they don't matter, like really. But I do remember once I was working on some sort of project. I can't even remember what it was now. It was many many years ago, and I bought a book about horoscopes. So I went to a bookstore. I found a book about horoscopes. I think I bought one or two other things too. But when I went to check out, the cashier at this bookstore was like going through scanning the books and got to the horoscope books, and he just goes. Like this sort of snooty, scoffy, like, why would anyone buy this book? And I'm like, dude, in retrospect, in the moment it was embarrassing. I was also a lot younger, so I was less confident. And like I stifled the urge to say, it's not that I believe in her. Wow. I'm gonna write this in the chat too. Yes, Kevin, agreed. Thank you for nudging the algorithm, first off. I appreciate it. And also, those who mind don't matter, those who matter don't mind. Dr. Seuss was very wise. And so, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I guess a bookish thing that might be potentially embarrassing is the fact that I cannot keep my streaming software connected. So, sorry about that. And it's hard to tell when I am. Yes. Oh, good to know. Thank you, Kevin, for letting me know that it's still working even though OBS itself is freezing. I appreciate that. Thank you for that information. I will ignore it then. We'll just go. We'll just keep going. Okay, let's move on to question 5. So, a book you've been embarrassed not to like. I think it's more that it's a little awkward that I did not like this book, and I didn't do a video on it. I read it this year. I didn't do a video on it because I didn't get very far. And I don't feel like it's fair to make a video trashing a book that you only got like 80 pages into. So that doesn't feel right to me. If I'm not going to finish it, then like I can only say so much about it. But a mini review here. Project Hail Mary, Andy Weir. I did not like this book. I did not understand why anyone else likes this book. I might get slammed on this video because of it. Who knows? Maybe my saying that will raise awareness of this video and bring traffic to it. But like, I didn't get it. I did not connect to the main character. I didn't really like the writing. I found it kind of just boring. I found the main character really self-congratulatory. So yeah, I did not like it. Now, I don't judge anyone who did like it, but there are so many people who love this book like intensely, including some booktubers whose opinions I respect, whose perspectives are very interesting, and with whom I agree on a lot of books, but not this one. But anyway, so it's a little weird. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. There you go. There you go. Okay, a book cover you find embarrassing. So they always say don't judge a book by its cover, and that it sounds nice in theory, and it's a nice idea about like getting to know someone before you actually judge them, etc., etc. But like realistically, humans are judgment machines. We're pattern recognition machines. You can't turn off the unconscious bias, and so book covers are kind of a big deal when it comes to marketing, when it comes to getting people's attention, when there are dozens of books on a shelf and you're trying to figure out which one you want to purchase. But so I actually, when I do buy books, when I'm looking at books, when I have an option of different covers, I do actually pick the one I like the most. Why not? But in the past, so for a long time, my only copy of Lord of the Rings, and I got actually they're, oops, hang on, back here. Here we go. They're back there. You can just see them. Lord of the Rings. So I had, or have, I still have, an omnibus version that's got all three Lord of the Rings books in it, of the main trilogy in it. And it's a movie tie-in copy. So like there's a picture on the front from like, and it's a nice, I think it's a nice cover, honestly. It's got like a nighttime scene. You can see the Nazgul rider in the background, and like it's really cool, right? But it's a movie tie-in, and it's very clearly a movie tie-in cover. Well, I was reading it. This was when I was in college. I was reading it. Had it somewhere. It was sitting on a table with my stuff or whatever, and someone made a loud comment of like, ugh, why would people, I hate when people buy movie tie-in covers. It's so cheesy. It's so like, it's so stupid, something, insert negative adjective here. And I was like, well, that's mine. And I know intellectually that person should have been embarrassed, because why are you being so openly judgmental about something that like has nothing to do with you? And no one asked. But that's not how embarrassment works. That's not how social awkwardness works. I felt embarrassed in that moment. Now I chuckle and I'm like, I hope that person has learned to grow, and appreciate that not everything is going to be a certain way, and like that you don't have to be so rigid in your worldviews. But if not, I'm sorry, I'm sad for that person. But regardless, that was an embarrassing moment related to my book cover. I do have a book that I don't know that's embarrassing. It's not so much the cover, but the title. So and I think I did a video on this last year. Careless in Red by Elizabeth George, which is a murder mystery novel, but it sounds like it should have Fabio on the cover. It sounds like a very like sort of 90s 80s 90s sort of romance novel of like Careless in Red. I don't know. It's not that at all, but it would probably feel a little weird to me to read that in public, and I guess that goes back to the previous one, because the cover is emblazoned with these words, Careless in Red. And if you don't know who Elizabeth George is, which unfortunately many people don't, read Elizabeth George. She's fantastic, but you may not realize that what that is. You might just make an assumption. Again, strangers' assumptions about me should not matter, but here we are. So that's just how the world goes. All right. Number 7 is a book you feel embarrassed not to have read. There are actually a lot of classic authors that I have not read. And 2 that I jotted down here that feel particularly egregious to me are Hemingway and Tolstoy, just because they seem like really, I don't know, they're 2 classic authors that I've never read. Hemingway in particular is just because he's such I guess a core classic American writer. It feels like I should have read him. Also, he had cats. I love cats. I mean, really, I've been to the Hemingway house in Florida, and that's a delightful experience. If you ever have the chance to go to the Florida Keys and go to the Hemingway, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff to do there, but beaches and restaurants and town to walk around and that sort of thing. But like the Hemingway house, this historical building where he used to live that is now a cat sanctuary, is just delightful. You just sit down and be surrounded by cats. Who could want anything more? So I go from my house of sitting down and being surrounded by cats to vacation to be sitting and surrounded by cats. I mean, it's kind of amazing. There's also like historical stuff, whatever. There's a tour, but the cats, the cats. And then Tolstoy is like War and Peace is kind of that iconic novel that everyone's heard of, but I think not as many people have read. And I've heard a mix of things about it. Like there are definitely people who love it, and there are people who hate it, and there are people who didn't make it through. I don't know which person I would be, but I won't know until I try it. I don't have a copy of War and Peace. I do have a copy of Anna Karenina, which I've heard from some people that they prefer that one over War and Peace. So who knows? I might not like any of it. Who knows? So here we are. Question 8. Let's get to question 8. An author or genre you're embarrassed to like. You know, I've spent a fair amount of time over the past few years, and it's 2020 with all of the nonsense, we'll call it. Y'all know what I'm talking about. That happened starting in 2020, and then it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. In 2020, I entered my cozy era, and with cozy games, trying to bring some coziness to my home, some hygge. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. This concept of just coziness and protecting yourself against the elements, and then some cozy books as well. And cozy books are on the rise for sure, especially like cozy fantasy books like Legends and Lattes has become this big phenomenon in the fantasy space. And I don't know that I'm embarrassed to like cozy genres per se, but in some ways they tend to be turn the brain off type genres, and there's nothing wrong with that, and sometimes you need that, and sometimes it's a good thing. They're not all very well written, just to be really clear. I think that's where my embarrassment comes from a little bit, is like knowing that I'm enjoying books that aren't always well written. And I'm not actually, Legends and Lattes is pretty well written, so I'm not calling anyone out specifically, but just sometimes you pick those up and you're like, what is this nonsense? I'm gonna read it anyway. So that feels a little I don't know, a little embarrassing to me. Cotton candy books, I guess we could call them. All right. And then number 9 is show or tell about an embarrassing bookish object. This is something that I won't, well, I can show a little bit of it. I have a massive book collection, and it's not embarrassing to me to have a lot of books. I love books. I have built up my collection over the past easily 20, gosh, more than that. I guess 25 plus years. I've been collecting books. I don't keep every book that comes into my house. I certainly get rid of books that I don't like, or that I finally realize that I'm just never going to read. But I think there's this focus on how people are consuming and judging what people are spending their money on, because a lot of people are struggling financially, and I don't want to I never want to forget that I know that I am in a privileged position, that I can amass a collection of books, I can pay for things that I need, and I know that is a privilege. But I think again, this comes down to how much do you care about other people's judgment. And when you put yourself out on the internet, like I am doing with my channel, and no one said anything to me yet. I also have a very tiny channel. Not many people have watched my channel, and that's okay. We'll get to the bigger numbers. We'll work our way there. But it does make me conscious of like how I show what books I have. I prefer to read books physically, and I like to own the books that I read. I'm very, very pro library, but the ticking timer, even though I know you can extend it, the having a timer associated to how long it takes me to read something, just that I find that really stressful. So, but that's how I read, and that's not how, like, if you don't read that way, if you don't want to have a lot of books in your house, if you don't have space for a lot of books, no judgment from me on that. But so that's something that I do think about, though, is that I have an awareness. And so one of my early videos, I did a book haul. I went to a bookstore, made a little vlog about going to the bookstore, and then showed what books I purchased. I don't do hauls regularly because it feels a little bit too influencer-y, I guess. That's totally a word, right? Influencer-y. It feels a little bit too much of the, like, I bought all this stuff. Look at my purchases. But I'll tell you, when I do go buy books, a lot of times, I mean, I buy new books sometimes, but most of the books I buy are used. So it may look like I spent hundreds of dollars when really I spent tens of dollars, or twenties of dollars. And so anyway, money and consumer culture and this hellscape that is late stage capitalism, like all of those things can get tangled up in a person's head, and it can be really, and I'll say my head, but everybody. And so it can be tough to think about, to decide what you want to share and how much you want to share. So anyway, so that's a bit, that feels awkward to me sometimes. Most of the time I don't even think about it, because like that's where I live, but then I want to be aware of privilege as well. So anyway, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. That's probably the most awkward, since I'm like cutting myself off and not finishing my sentence. But that's that one. Number 10, what words, sounds, or phrases are you embarrassed to overuse in your book? In your booktuber life. Filler words. Filler words certainly happen. One thing that I noticed when I started making videos is just how much I automatically revert to corporate speak, by which I mean every company has a vocabulary, as does corporate America as a whole has a vocabulary, and I'm sure that like corporate England has a vocabulary, corporate Japan has a vocabulary, and each company, each organization is going to have a certain way that they talk about things. And there are a lot of reasons for this. We don't have to get into that, but one of which is that it fosters a culture of belonging. And even the phrase fosters a culture of belonging sounds very corporate to me. But it's something that I noticed I do a lot, and I say things, I express things in a certain way that I know that I learned from working in an office. And because I am 42, I am middle-aged, I've been in the workforce for 20 plus years, and so it permeates your mind. The way that you talk, the way you talk, the way you hear other people talk. And so doing this YouTube channel has actually been really great for that, for training myself not to do that when I'm not at work. And it's been hard. I catch myself. I'm probably miss quite a few. There might be some of you out there who maybe don't work in an office who are like, why'd you say it that way? That was weird. I'm sure that happens. But that's something that I've been making a conscious effort to eliminate when I'm not. When you're at work, you should talk like you're at work, and that's fine. But that's that context switch that I'm trying to do on purpose, because I'm not a corporate automaton, and because, quite frankly, corporate vocabulary is weird sometimes. That could be its own video, but there's some ways of saying things that I'm like, oh, that felt awkward when I'm in a booktube space, and so I want to talk like I'm just an ordinary person talking about books, an ordinary reader who just likes to read and talk about books. So yes, that is a goal, is to reduce that. I wrote down a bonus question, because when Andy was filming his video, so when I was tagged, Kelly tagged me, as I said, Kelly at Books I'm Not Reading. And what I do when somebody tags me in a tag video, if they are kind enough to put the questions in their description, I copy and paste, or in this case, I wrote them down in my notebook so that I could have them here. But I copy them down from that description. And then I always go back and watch the original tag as well, if they link to it, if I can find it, and just sort of double check that I've got the right questions down. And I noticed when I was watching Andy's video that there was a question that he asked that he did not write down in his description, and so Kelly did not have, because I would almost guarantee that Kelly just copy pasted. Wouldn't blame her. I did that when I put it in my description. So, but anyway, there's a question he asked that wasn't written down, and it was. So I'm considering it a bonus question. I did not write down in what order he put this, but the question was, share an embarrassing secret about your reading. And I thought this was so interesting. So, I think for booktubers, there's this perception that all we do is sit around and read. That's, you know, I've gotten, you know, I have a book in progress in arm's length right now. Like, I am reading this book right now. But I've also, an eagle-eyed observer might notice that when I did my Hey, I'm Back video at the end of March, I was reading this then too. And I'm not even halfway through. So this leads to the embarrassing secret about my reading, which is that I read a lot. I read, I think, fairly quickly-ish. I'm not a speed reader by any means, but I think I read fairly quickly. But I often have trouble getting into a reading session, if you will, in that I am no stranger to distraction. I'm no stranger to doom scrolling. My attention span is better on some days than on others. In short, I am a human living in the modern world. And so I like to play video games, and sometimes I will play video games or watch television later into the evening than is probably healthy, because I'm human and that's what humans do. And while those are habits that I work to improve, they're still going to happen regardless. I know that if I get into bed at 10 o'clock and read for an hour and then turn out the light, I will sleep better. I know this because I've done it. But knowing something and doing something are two different things. And sometimes you get in the zone. And so I'm not making excuses, but I do want to say that if you are watching me or another booktuber and you're thinking, gosh, they read so many books, and like, I could never do that because I just can't concentrate. I'm reading the Forsyte Saga right now. I'm on book 3. I've got my edition has 3 books in it. I'm in the 3rd book, so I think I'm like 600 or 700 pages into the 900-page volume. And I'm basically reading it 1 or 2 chapters at a time in the evening. I'm reading The Maltese Falcon right now. I'm almost done, so that'll be next week's video. I will definitely finish it this weekend because I think I've got like 50 pages left. But I'm reading it gradually in the evening or in the waiting rooms, or you know, where I'm reading it gradually. But I don't. Sometimes I sit down and I'll read for 3 hours, but that's not the norm for me. And I think a lot of booktubers, if they're being honest, would admit that they're like that too. Not everybody. There are definitely people, and I envy the person who can sit down and just read for an entire evening, like have dinner, read, go to bed. Like, that would be, I used to be able to do that, and my brain just can't focus for that long anymore. Most of the time. Occasionally I will do that. Like, I read Kindred by Octavia E. Butler in a day. During reading sprints, and I just, like, that was an amazing experience. It is not a typical experience for me, unfortunately. I would love it for it to be, but anyway, so that's my embarrassing secret about reading. I think I've seen a number of fun shorts, and I might make one myself, of like the influencer, I've seen with a fitness influencer of like, this is what it looks fitness influencers do in their show on their video that they do every morning, and this is what I do. And like, you know, the influencer is up at 3:30 in the morning and takes a cold shower and shoves their face in ice water, whereas the ordinary person is like sleeping until 9:15 and you know, crawling out of bed, eventually exercising, but not first thing in the morning. And for me, I think it's similar. I think people sometimes might have a perception. I know I've had a perception of the booktuber waking up gradually, you know, reading, getting out of bed, getting their day started, making some tea, reading some more, starting their work day, reading over lunch, finishing their work day, reading over dinner. And like, no, that's not me. That's not me. But that doesn't mean you can't read a lot, and that doesn't mean you can't enjoy reading in smaller doses. Like, you just fit it in. Okay, enough said on that topic, I think. Those were all the questions. So the last thing to do is to tag people. I will tag people. But if I've got a couple of names written down, or a couple of channels written down, and I will also tag you after this finishes so that they actually get a notification. But the people I'm tagging first is Chloe Frizzle, then Erin Facer, Heather Reeds, and Chris's Reading Corner. So 4 lovely channels, check them out. I invite, and if you're watching this, if you have a channel, I invite you to consider yourself tagged if you would like to be, whether I said your name just now or not. And if you don't have a channel and want to tell me the answers to any or all of these questions in the comments, I would love to read your answers. So happy tagging, happy reading. I hope you are all doing well, that you find a way not to be embarrassed about your bookishness, your bookish opinions, the books that you read, the books that you take out into the world, or purchase out in the world. And most importantly, whatever you do, it is never embarrassing to read. So keep reading, and I will see you in the next one.